I will, in the downtime before we get started, mention that if you would like to vote in this election, you need to have a current membership. And if you would like to receive a ballot from that membership, you need to have your current address updated with the SCA, which you can do on sca.org. So that's a thing. Also, we need to have at least 50% of the ballots back. So please return your ballot. And if you cannot force yourself to vote, please fill in the top half and return it anyway, and it will still count towards the total. We still do not yet have an official date for meeting, but the minute we know how long we have for the election, I will tell you. All right, so it's 8 o'clock. So though I believe you all had to click through permission, just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded so that we can show it to people who could not be here tonight. Which I think, and I'm going to take down my email and or the anti-bullying policy, depending. But please note it. All right, Thomas and Razia, would you like to say anything?
I want to thank everyone here who is coming to this. As much as I would have preferred to have this in person, I'm really glad we can have this. And also, I'd like to thank everyone on the 3 slates who is volunteering to go through this process. I think Helen is for the barony that we have more people, and I'm really grateful that we've got such a trio of candidates that I don't have any worries regardless of which way this goes. Thank you all.
Yes, it is far more relaxing to have more good options than, fewer options. And it makes me very happy that we had people come forward, because for a bit I was a little worried that we might not get enough.
So thank you, everyone. And I think that's about all we have. So I don't want to keep anyone. Cassandra?
Thank you. So just to start, I'm going to have people introduce themselves and also answer the first question that was submitted, which I believe you have all answered, but it's basically just kind of saying what Carolingian activities or guilds you have been involved with prior to the pandemic, because things are a little weird now. We're going to start with Aridin and Deirdre.
Excellent, thank you. Deirdre, would you like to go first?
Sure, I guess. My name is Deirdre Grenwode, and the activities that I was active in prior to the pandemic were I was a regular at archery practice, thrown weapons practice, low company, council, and see, I can't even remember my own things. And low company and half of the thrown weapons practice were also at my house. And also Ashrush Craft Night while it was still running. And then I was occasionally a visitor to the Ashrush rapier and heavy practices, but mostly to spectate and not to participate.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aridin Gio. I've participated pretty consistently in thrown weapons, Great Council, low company. As I can, I participate in dance. I did participate in Ashrush Craft Night a couple times while it was still running. Needleworkers quite a while ago, probably 4 or 5 years at this point, but I have not participated in the new Needleworkers, although I am looking forward to it. Newcomers Night and Towers Project Days.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, Fiore and Frithrik.
Hello, I'm Fiore.
I'm Frithrik.
And our first question, I guess, we both are primarily archers, I guess. We came in through archery. We are proud members, adopted members of Towers. Frithrik and Arya throw weapons as well. You can
You're fine.
We've both attended council. I attend more frequently. I think we've both attended low company once, or maybe more for you.
No, just once.
I've been once. Needleworkers happens here at our house, so most of the time I am here, and we have been virtual for the pandemic.
I also attend Needleworkers because it is in my living room.
Yes, sometimes he's a willing attendee and sometimes he's just here. Newcomers, we've both attended occasionally. Towers Project Days, we've attended frequently, and Canton meetings as well as Baronial Council meetings and Baronial gatherings when those were happening. Also, we didn't mention, but Family Point at Carolingian events have been a part of our highlights, not a all the time event, but important to us.
Do you have anything to add, Friedrich? All right.
No, I mean, it's like, so when we're just reading the answer that we kind of posted, right?
Yeah.
I can only get into trouble if I just keep talking.
Did I miss anything?
Right on, then.
Okay, I'm going to mute him.
Yvonne and Arliana.
Okay, I'm Arliana van Veek. I regularly attended council meetings. I've gone to storytellers, and I've gone to a couple of Asher's Craft Night and needleworkers meetings. And I've been involved in the newcomers since they started. I'm very active in the regularly participate in the Canton, the Towers meetings and project days. I host them at my home, as well as the archery practice and thrown weapons practice, which the Carlisle ones were hosted at my home. So I don't do archery as often as I'm a marshal, but I don't practice. I can't. My shoulder bothers me, so I can't use. Can't do archery. I don't think what else I'd said. And I've gone to. Yeah. So and I've been.
Okay. I'm Yvonne. I moved to the Barony a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. So 2018, at least half that year, I didn't live here. So, I just recently started attending things locally. But in the time that I've been here, I have been a regular attendee at the council meetings because I'm Seneschal of Towers. I've also obviously been running the Towers business meetings and attending and helping to coordinate the arts and the crafts days that happen once a month in Towers. I've also attended newcomers, and I participated in archery until I hurt my shoulder and have started again recently with crossbow. I've also dabbled with thrown weapons a few times and enjoyed that as well.
All right. Thank you. I believe that question actually should just have said, which baronial events take place in your house? All slates, please answer. So does anyone who is watching here tonight have a question they would like to get in before I get to some of the other submitted ones from the website? Please either raise your hand or speak. Pandolf, I see you waving.
Hello. So thank you all for running. I really liked a lot of the goals in your statements, but what I was hoping to hear more about from each slate is more of an action plan, more of what you feel like you could do as Baron and Baroness to move toward your goals.
For this one, we'll have Fiore and Friedrich answer first. Sorry, guys, it's a rotation.
Okay. All right. Do you want to jump in? You don't have to. I can.
Well, why don't you start?
So it's fairly important to us that we have a bunch of ideas. We have thoughts about what is happening in the barony and our view from the barony. And we have, I think, not a concrete plan on how to put our vision forward yet. I guess we could have steps in that direction.
Part of that is because in the end, it's not going to be our vision. I mean, through this process, through engage, if we win through continued conversations and outreach to the populace, both those people who are very active now and some of those who haven't been as engaged, we'd like to really find out whether what the populace wants aligns with what we think or whether we need to pivot and then act.
So I think it is important to us to hear what's happening in the barony. We're good at action plans. Both of us work in facilitation. Carl does Lean Six Sigma. I do appreciative inquiry. We're very good at getting to root causes, taking in information, and then developing systems and processes. So actually developing an action plan once we know exactly what the direction is isn't something that we'd find challenging, but we also don't want to feel like our agenda is the only possible view of the barony, because that's just not realistic. It's a huge, huge place. So hopefully that answers enough. And if not, maybe we'll talk to you one-on-one.
The great muting button gets me. Yvonne and Arliana.
Sure. So we've talked, and I think that we have similar thoughts to what Fiore and Frederick just said about wanting to have listening sessions to talk with members of the barony and find out what they're concerned about and what they would like to see us working on. We've got some ideas. Obviously, one of the things that we would like to work on most would be how we can improve communication and rebuilding community in light of the year that we've just finished up and will likely be ongoing as we work through this COVID issue. How do we continue to remain a community while we're separated from each other and have to look at each other through Zoom screens? So we've got a communications plan that we'd like to make sure that we're communicating with members of the barony on a regular basis. And we would also like to have some of those listening sessions to hear kind of what the barony finds important and what they would like to see us working on. Kind of similar to Frederick, I'm in software, and I also deal with this kind of hearing about what a problem is and then coming up with action plans against those. So that's also something that I've got a lot of experience in my professional life and can apply to the SEA as well.
And basically, I would agree with everything Yvonne said, excuse me. And I feel that it's very important to be welcoming to people and try to connect them to people who can help them. I like to dabble a lot and try different things. And I want to encourage the barony to do that too and want to hear what they have to say.
Thank you. And then Aridin and Deirdre.
So this is actually something that Deirdre and I have talked about quite a bit. You can imagine we've all been talking about a lot of things lately, but specifically plans for how to implement what we'd like to do while if we're lucky enough to be your barony heads. It's not just about listening to the barony. It's about looking and watching and identifying those issues, maybe that we've seen previously or that we see as we're looking out. I don't think it's enough to just have people tell us what the problems are. I think we have to be proactive there. So part of that is going to be centering voices that are not ours. None of the problems of the barony can be solved by two people as with the backgrounds that Deirdre and I have. We need other people. We need the barony working with us to solve our issues. Deirdre?
So I guess in that vein, communication is really something that we've spent a lot of today talking about. How do we more effectively use the communication systems that we have? How do we open up new ones and to connect people? What lessons about accessibility can we take from this pandemic so that we can make a barony that is big and has diverse issues of transportation and is easily segmented? How can we use the technology that we've learned to use during the pandemic to keep people together and to keep fostering a sense of community? And then once we've identified issues either on our own or by listening to other people, how I think our real role is to be the people to lift up voices, connect people to each other who can be problem solvers, but not necessarily have a this is the one true way plan going into things, so much as an ability to connect, to hear people and then to find the people who are best suited for a particular problem and get them involved in solving it.
I will say, as far as an actionable plan goes, mundanely, I'm a project coordinator and an office manager. It's not necessarily my job to have the answer. It's my job to know who to go to. And I do think that's one of my strengths. So the plans that we have for the Barony rely a great deal on us finding the people who can do this best. Either us as facilitators or us ourselves.
And I guess since we've all said, mundanely, I'm a veterinarian, which at first might not seem like a skill that is going to be useful here, but hear me out. Being a veterinarian means identifying a problem and then speaking to someone who actually has the decision-making power. And especially these days, I don't actually meet my clients. I talk to them all on the phone, or the owners of my patients. And so I need to talk to people and figure out what their concerns are and how they want to move forward, and do it in a collaborative way, which I really think is something that is a skill that is going to be very useful as a baronial head.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do either of the other two slates want to add anything, or are y'all good? I think you're good. Does someone else have a question they would like to ask now? Fortunata?
It would help if I deployed the microphone. So something that I think I tend to notice a lot, because full honesty, I am sort of skewed younger in terms of people who live in the Barony. I see a lot of, wonderful real life grown-ups and many families with small children, but I'm maybe a little concerned, and maybe slightly selfishly so, that we don't have other young adult people in the Barony. I don't know if this is a great question, but is that something that you think can/should be addressed? We have all of these, what's the word? All of the old college groups, which are all now defunct, like half-formed idea. I'm gonna shut my face now.
First up, Yvonne and Arliana.
Arliana, you want to take that?
I'll start. I think that we ought to try to get people of all ages involved. And I know that we've in the past have gotten people of possibly the young, we used to get them from the colleges, but we also have been getting people from the conventions, the lovely demo they do at Aresia every year. We get people from there. We've gotten people from lots of different places. We've gotten a lot of people coming in to do archery and thrown weapons. It's very, it's a gateway drug. It's really easy to get in because we have the equipment for them. It's not very much outlay on their part. It's really hard to try to figure out how to get people. It's word of mouth. But I think it's important to try to be as welcoming and open as possible. Bon?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, part of it, I think, is going to be also having a plan for how, when those people do come, how do we make sure that we retain them, and how do we make sure that they feel welcomed and have a place within the Barony. So, Arliana and I have talked about, how to do hospitality for members of the Barony at events, or how to make sure that as people come in, they've got stuff to do at an event, when they show up for their first event and really don't know anybody and don't know what to do, and having activities that are, pre-planned and available for those kinds of people, or having information packets or things like that, so that as folks show up, we've got a way to help make sure that they feel welcome, that they feel like they have a place here. Certainly, we can look at ideas on social media as a big thing for lots of communities, on lots of people. Although I know that there are some people who want to eschew Facebook and that sort of thing. But we could certainly increase our outreach there as well. And we've got a lot of online events going on right now during the pandemic. It would be interesting to see, how we can leverage um, the the online activities that are going on now, both to try to attract other folks as well as to reach out to other baronies and other across the kingdom or across the known world about how they're trying to address this kind of problem now. This isn't something that's unique to Carolingia. When I was in North Shield, we were having similar issues there. We had a group that was very college centered, college based, and that part of the barony, that size of the barony was diminishing, and the age of the barony was increasing. So this is a problem that is not just unique to Carolingia, and it would be interesting to try to reach out and see what kind of ideas have been fostered elsewhere to try to address this problem.
Thank you. Aridin and Deirdre.
So this is, sorry, do you mind? This is a problem near and dear to my heart, to be perfectly honest. When I was Chatelaine, I served as Chatelaine for 6 years, and it was constantly the question. One of the things that I did when I was Chatelaine was help implement the ambassadors at Otter's Welcome. And the ridiculous amount of positive response we got from that, from newcomers who had come to the event, really felt cared for, really felt that they had someone, and young children even, attracting, speaking to families, and just the feedback we got was overwhelming. So that is something that I would like to actually see at every event. But that doesn't solve the problem of getting people to events. And the two big problems that I see for recruitment of younger people are transportation and communication. And transportation is very hard when so many of the activities of this barony are not tea accessible. That is a huge issue. And so I would like to see these stables, which has long been a staple of the barony, but has not always been as utilized as it should be. I would love to see the stables become a more active thing again. And I would like to see us advertise more. We do big advertising pushes before Otter's Welcome, but no other times. Why? So I think we need to do the pushes of advertising that we do for Otters, for all of our events, for all of our demos, for all of our practices, and really give people an opportunity to come to a more relaxed atmosphere than maybe an event might be for them, to start out for something for the first time.
I agree with everything Aridin said. I was a provost of one of those now defunct boroughs, and I would love to say I know exactly how to get the boroughs back and running. But the rules were getting tighter and tighter even when I was there. And getting a campus group going, especially if you don't have a presence already on campus, is really tricky at this point. It's hard to be allowed on. There are lots more rules and regulations than they used to be. So I think advertising and making our presence more known, particularly in the places that we're sort of into, like Aresia and Intercon and so on, is important. And having contact cards or brochures like we did for Otter's Welcome or what have you available, and going into game shops and community boards and so on. People want community. It's talked about all the time how people want community, how people just out of college and in college have trouble connecting and finding other people. So I think just being more visible and more obvious would be really useful, a way to get more people in general, but hopefully more young people. And then back to the listening, asking young people or the younger members of our barony, what do you think would help? And then doing it.
All right, thank you, Fiore and Friedrich.
That's us.
It is. So I think both, like all of you have made a bunch of great points about that. We agree that's an issue. I mean, it's an issue SCA wide. One of the big problems is it's much easier for younger people to attract younger people. So without a solid, if you have a solid presence of 19 to 23-year-olds, it's much easier to attract more 19 to 23-year-olds. And when you trot 30, 40, 50 or 60-year-olds out, 70-year-old out now, it's harder to attract them, especially, and we're not allowed on campuses the way we used to be. As you said, there are a lot of challenges there. They're not insurmountable, but they're real challenges. It's not for lack of effort that we don't have younger people. From where I sit specifically, I think more visibility, both in advertising, but also in terms of just smaller, locally visible activities that actually people can see. Because seeing a flyer or something is different than seeing people actually doing a thing. So that's I think a big part of that focus, and actively engaging the people in that age group, the ones we do have, to really participate in that push, or the people that look like they're in that age group.
Yeah.
Patience.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about how we think recruitment and engagement are interrelated parts of the issue. How do we engage young people to be forward-facing in specific ways? How do we engage parts of the barony to look at what we're doing that is already working so well, the things that we're finding fun, the things that are sparkly for us? How do we put those things forward-facing so that it becomes an issue of we're having so much fun and it's so visible to the outside world that we're having this fun that they want in? So how do we create those environments where we can show off the young people that we do have doing these things that they find marvelously fun to do? In your case, if we can put dancers out on a green somewhere on a T acceptable location, or 3 or 5, and advertise it's going to happen, people are going to see that dancing and they're going to have questions at the very least, and perhaps curiosity about, how do I do that thing? What is that thing? Why are they dressed like that? All of the things that attract nerds to our, kingdom of nerddom.
Thank you. If no one has anything to add, doesn't look like it. Does someone else have a question for the candidates? I don't think Nope, Pandolf again. I saw that hand.
Was trying to give other people a chance first. So being the spiritual figurehead of the barony is a job, and it's a job none of you have done before. And that's normal. But everybody taking on a new job has challenges and areas of growth. And I'd like to hear from each slate what you think your challenges and area of growth will be if the barony selects you as their next baron and baroness.
All right, Aridin and Deirdre, I think it's you.
Okay. You are absolutely correct in that this is going to be a challenge. It's a challenge I think that we're both up to, but I think the number one thing for me is going to be managing my time. Splitting my time between being a baroness, between doing the artwork that I love and supporting my business. It's very true that you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's going to be scheduling. It's going to be flexibility.
Oddly, I think one of the biggest challenges for me is going to be speaking like this. While I'm very comfortable with people that I know, I tend to get very shy with people that I don't know. And there will be a lot of people that I'm going to have to talk to that I don't know. Oh, should Aridin and I be selected as baronial heads? So it's an area where I've had to work on it for my whole life, and it's something that I continually do. And I'm lucky to have as my as my running mate somebody who is very outgoing and extroverted and can pull me along with her. So we can support each other. I guess we can complement each other's strengths and weaknesses to make the growing pains a little less painful.
Fiore and Friedrich?
All right. So personal hurdles. We've served a lot of barons and baronesses, and we've, as we entered this process, talked to a lot of both sitting and retired barons and baronesses. So we've talked to them about what they thought their hurdles were, and as we look to what our strengths and weaknesses are, we have a family. You know, we have a life, so that's going to be a challenge for all of us. But for us specifically, I think making sure that we're not always feeling like we are the answer to every question in the barony. When you are figureheads at the of a barony, it may be tempting, and people might actually believe that you are the end-all be-all, that you have the answer, that you are the person who has to solve this problem in this moment. But the reality is that we have an entire barony. There's a council, there's a seneschal, at events there's an autocrat, and while there's a lot of forward-facing speaking that has to happen, there's a lot of holding a container for your populace and what they're thinking and what their needs are. There's also a reality of the fact that you have to know how to delegate, you have to know how to ask for the help, trying to develop a deeper bench of those people that you turn to support you in those things. And for me, not being afraid of the things that are, you know, a reality. I'm an introvert. I play an extrovert on TV. I run a business. I have to be an extrovert, but that means that I have to find ways to recharge and to make sure that I have some reserves to put forward, to make sure that I can lean on my very extroverted husband when I need to cover for the lack of energy that might be present. And I think it also will serve when we have people that are coming towards us that also have, they might not want the extroverted husband, baron in their face. So they might need someone who's a little bit more introverted if those were our roles. So those are my thoughts. And we have, do you have something to add here, my beloved? You're making squinchy faces at me. If we get chosen, you will see us make squinchy faces at each other a lot.
Well, as I decide what I can get away with actually saying at any given moment.
This is the
without getting hit by a hairbrush, for example.
So one of our hurdles will be making successful squinchy faces at each other, so some of the inside thoughts stay inside.
Inside voice, outside voice, yeah. That's a one.
Yeah, so that's definitely a hurdle for us.
Thank you. Yvonne and Arliana.
Sure. Arliana, you want to go first or should I?
Okay. I am also not an extrovert. And I know this will be a challenge for me, which is one of the things I'm trying to do something different. I know a lot of people and I know a lot of different groups in the barony. I don't know all the groups, and I'd like to know everybody, to get to know all the different portions of the barony. I don't know the fighters that well. I used to back when I was the mistress of lists, but not in the last 20 years. And I'd like to, for me, I think getting to know all the different people in the barony and trying to represent them all, that's going to be a challenge to try to, meet them all and trying to understand what it is they want and for as a baroness. I think I can, I'm very good at welcoming people and connecting people, but I'd like to know what people are looking for. And I think I have strengths that I could do a good job, but it's going to be a little difficult for me to reach out to everybody. And that
Yeah, as probably the person who's been in the Barony the least amount of time out of the what, 6 of us, I definitely am going to have a big learning curve of meeting a lot of people that I haven't been able to meet yet because COVID and the small amount of time that I've been local. I've had the opportunity to see Arliana work a room. I know she knows lots of people and is very open with lots of people, and I'm pretty good at one-on-one with folks, but introducing myself and being the initiator of those kinds of conversations is sometimes difficult for me, as well as getting up in front of large groups of people and speaking. But I know that this is outside my comfort area and this outside of my comfort zone, and so I'm actually putting myself out as a candidate here as an attempt to sort of push myself in that particular area and as an opportunity for me to grow in that particular area. I'm sure that I'll have growing pains and we'll have to learn along the way, but it seems like a great opportunity to be able to meet everybody in the Barony and be I tend to be the person behind the scenes helping make things happen. Being the Baron and Baroness makes you a little bit more of a out front, the kind of people that people will come to and say, this problem's going on, or I noticed this person doing something, and so it opens up more opportunities for that people connection of there's an opportunity over here and this is the right person for it kind of thing. So that's an exciting opportunity that I see being able to grow in that particular area as part of this role.
Thank you. Looks like Edith has a question.
Okay. Hey, I'm here. Look at that. And does that help?
Hey, you look fine.
Okay. So Carolingia is a spread out barony exacerbated by traffic. And as has been noted, not everybody can get everywhere. In fact, one way or another, most of us can't get everywhere. See aforementioned traffic, because there's North Shore and South Shore and Framingham and downtown and people everywhere. When we get out of the plague time and we can actually go places, how are you going to reconnect the barony? We haven't been connected for a long time. There are clusters in places, and we need to be a barony again. How do you do that? Give me an idea, someplace to start.
All right, Fiore and Fieswick, you're up first.
So I hear two themes in your question, and I'll start with the second one. We've been starting to talk to people, and we have several other people that we want to talk to. As a matter of fact, anybody who wants to talk to us one-on-one, we want to talk to you. Most definitely. One on two, however that works. But we have the question in mind of what does it mean to be Carolingian? And it's not a question that we need to answer for the barony. We want the barony to answer that. And I would love to have a concert of 500 voices or whatever, however many members there are here in this vast barony, to tell us what is it that is Carolingia to you. There are people who are here because they love one specific activity and they're very focused in that place. And they might not have a deep connection to Carolingia. So how do we engage those people to make them feel not only that they're a fighter or a fencer or a dancer or an artisan, but they are Carolingian while they are doing those things. That's one of those things that I think listening and talking to different people, figuring out what's important to them, what makes it shiny, what makes them excited about their activity, is a way that we can start getting that collective unity. But the barony is vast and traffic is real. And some people don't have cars. So when we're looking at this problem of how do we engage with lots of people in such disparate ways, we have to get a little bit unique about the problem. And Friedrich actually has a good thought around this, so I will let him speak it before I butcher it.
Yeah. So when you have a barony this size, or any group this size, if I hold a meeting or a function in one place that does one thing, it doesn't engage across sectionally very well at all, or across community. If I have one heavy practice and it's on one corner of the barony and somebody can't make that one, they're out of luck. If all it does is heavy fighting, then what do the other people near that do in that area? So what I've been playing around in my head with is we should try and spread things out and have more, except that they'll be smaller, but engage people. I get the sense that the Ashenhurst practice or Crafts Night was a good example of that, but it doesn't have to be built around a canton or a borough. It's almost like trolley stop neighborhoods in certain cities, where everywhere there was a trolley stop, a little neighborhood would build up. So Carolingia is made up, much like Boston, of many, many smaller sub-communities. And if we can kind of disperse activities and allow people to get to things close to them, even if so we don't have to have 100 people or 50 people at something, we can have 8 or 10 or 12 and still kind of build that community that way.
Thank you. And now, where am I? Yvonne and Arliana.
We were also thinking about having smaller gatherings in different places in the barony. I'm not sure whether we can have we can't have fighter practice at many different places. We don't have the people to do that unless we can find the people to run it and have the places. But we can have some gatherings. What we were thinking in terms of even when as soon as the plague gets lifted a little bit or the weather gets better, we can maybe meet in a park someplace, in different places, and get together. That's part of it. As far as the transportation, I know, Edith, for many years you were the clerk of the stables, and 10 years. And I know you very successfully got people to carpool and to get to places. If we can do more of that. Ron?
Yeah, I think kind of what Frederick was saying, having smaller groups participating or getting together and gathering makes it easier to get folks who are not as mobile to those activities that are more local to them. Obviously, I think with COVID, we've definitely expanded into this realm of video calls and e-activities, and I think that right now some folks are feeling a lot of burnout. But on another sense, it does actually make the society a lot more open and available to folks who may have transportation difficulties and are not able to get around. So that may be something to continue looking at doing in the future. For example, I know getting to council may be difficult because of its location outside of the main center of the city, but continuing to have a video option available would definitely make that a lot more available, a lot more open to folks who are not as mobile. I'm probably one of the furthest people away from Grand Council, so I would that's an issue that I've had to deal with personally. Even though I am mobile, it still takes me over an hour to drive there. So that's something that I've personally experienced that traffic issue, and knowing how much of an issue that is for members of the barony. Definitely, that's something that we're going to have to work on as we try to rebuild a community and bring folks back together after the COVID situation begins to open up again.
Thank you. Eridan and Deirdre?
So I think back a bit to long ago when I first started, and dance practice a couple of times went from its then home at MIT out to Tufts, not to have a weekly dance practice at Tufts all the time, but to attract people so that they knew that it existed. And also, it's once you start going someplace and you know people, you're more likely to get together or find a carpool and get to where it is regularly. So while I hesitate to try to make regular tiny practices everywhere, because I worry that it, one, is hard to do for a lot of things, and two, could lead to further fragmentation of the barony. I think trying to find a way for visiting, as it were, of activities to other areas could be really helpful. And as far as like meeting in parks sometimes, I think that's a great idea. Greenwood Isle, when I was provost, used to have a picnic. It was in garb, but that was the only kind of agenda of the SDA at that point. And it was just bring some food, wear some garb, chat. And so it wasn't an event per se, it was basically a practice in terms of legality, but it was just people meeting up in garb and eating. And it was fun and it was easy for people to do. And that is a very mobile activity, especially in good weather, that I think would be attractive to a lot of people. And like, you know, and it's easy to do places that are tea accessible as well as places that are not tea accessible, because most places have a green and most greens don't need you to get permission to have a picnic. I also think that taking advantage of the lessons we've learned about virtual space is really big. The craft night that Thomas and Razia started, or the ANS night, is something that if Aridin and I became baronial heads, that we would want to continue, because meeting virtually and having that virtual community so that it doesn't matter what your ability to leave on a certain night is or how long it might take you to get somewhere, it just helps the group stay together.
The other thing that I would like to do is to look at where all of our current practices are and actually assess how big those spaces are, and if there are other events or other activities that could take place there at the same time. The largest barony that I ever served, other than Carolingia, was Barony of Storvik, which, comparatively speaking, is about the size of Ashurst, to be perfectly honest. Big as far as Atlantia goes, but not big as far as the East goes. And one of the most effective recruitment tools Storvik had was fight practice. It was held at a church in the parking lot. We had use of the parking lot and the hall. And rapier was in the hall, heavy list was in the parking lot, ANS was at the tables, and dance was on the stage. And so we had 4 relatively separate groups coming together once a week and interacting and chatting and meeting each other and bringing new people. And we were very lucky in the location because it was right on the row where all the dorms are. So college kids walked by all the time. I don't necessarily know that we can set up something like that here, but I think we can use the spaces that we already have more effectively. And that's something that I would like to pursue.
Thank you. Does someone else have a question? I see no hands at the moment, so I'm going to pretend to be a member of the populace and ask a question. I hear a lot of fabulous suggestions for improving the barony, all of which require a lot of volunteers. Now, we have, let's say, about 250 paid members in the barony, and a greater number than that of unpaid members, and probably less than 10% get involved in the running of the barony, whether autocrating or being an officer. So what can you do to improve that situation so we have a deeper bench and we don't burn out the people we have? And I'm still the person running this. So, Yvonne and Arliana.
That's a really good question. I think that's also, an issue that is being faced across the society, not just in our own particular barony here. For the volunteers that we do have, obviously we want to make sure that we're doing the whole feed and care of our volunteer situation, effectively, so that they don't burn out, and we are trying to get more folks to help out in that role. Part of, I think, what happens a lot with volunteerism is that folks they don't necessarily understand that there's a need, and B, they don't necessarily understand what that entails, because they've never done it before. They may be afraid of doing it. And they may think that it's going to be some enormous thing, where really we're just looking for volunteers for an hour to help out with Feast, or we're looking for volunteers for an hour to help out with Gate. So some of that, I think, it comes down to effective communication. Some of it may be an issue of education in terms of what exactly are we looking for, and how can we help set those volunteer needs in a light that explains it better, exactly what we're looking for, and what kind of experience it's going to be, so that folks aren't afraid of stepping up and trying to take on that task, and making sure that as part of that communication effort that we've talked about multiple times, making sure that there's effective communication going on across the barony, making it a bit more apparent when we do have those openings, or those needs, that we were looking for somebody to help step up and help help out at the gate table, or whatever the case might be, so that folks are aware that there are those opportunities and those needs, because sometimes it's not so much a matter of folks don't want to volunteer, they just don't even realize that there's an opening that they could be volunteering for, and that what I've seen is that folks get involved and they work those small volunteer shifts in an event, and then they start being willing to maybe take on something bigger, and maybe take on a particular role for an event at some point in the future, or become a co-steward for an event, and then being a steward for an event. They kind of work their way up through the chain, or taking on an office. But a lot of it, I think, is folks need to kind of understand what those needs are, and what that volunteering is entailing, what they're really stepping up for.
And I think there also needs to be some mentoring along the way. People have to, explain to people what it is we're asking them to do, and say, not just, here, you go do this, and help them say, I'll work with you, and you can help me with this, and maybe next time you can do it. And the other thing I think we also do need is to recognize what people are doing. And I think that we can do more for recognition. And we'd like to have, if we are chosen as Jabronial heads, we would like to sort of implement something where we would recognize people. I know Razia did it, and Thomas were doing some of that, but to do more, finding out this person has helped in this thing. Let's, just thank them. It's amazing what thanks will do. And I'm not saying it's not happening now, but I think you can never do enough thanks.
Aridin and Deirdre?
One of the things that I learned when I stepped up as Chatelaine was the entire job. The outgoing Chatelaine essentially had an attack of life, and through absolutely no fault of her own, I stepped up with very little initial information. And so what I would like to see is a great deal more transparency about what being an officer is, how many hours a week it takes, what sort of external resources you need to do that. When you're asking for help at an event, just saying, we need people for gate, thanks, and sitting down is fine, but it's not effective. We need transparency. I think it's more than just communication. It's real honesty about the job. One of the things that I've come across is that people who have a job and they like doing it are hesitant to be completely honest with the next person coming in or with whoever might be their replacement. And it's a thing that I see in the professional world that I think needs to go away. And it's a thing that I see in the SCA that I think needs to go away. You may be wonderful at that job, but you can't do it forever, nor should you have to. So being transparent about what you do, how you do it, how long it takes you to do it, and what resources the Barony has for you, and what resources you'll need to find on your own.
So when I stepped up as Seneschal of Ashurst, the things I had to learn were almost nothing, because Razia was very organized and had a written list of, what she did and how it was done, and with flexibility for me to learn it, to do it my own way, but a framework for me to work on. So I'd love it if we could engage the people who are already doing a lot of these things, and besides saying thank you, ask a little bit more of them and say, can you write down for me what it is that you do? Can you write it like a little mini manual so that we have something to show people for the next time? And I also think really actively getting people to mentor. This is the connecting people part of being baronial heads. Like, hey, is there something you're interested in doing? Come talk to us. We know a lot of people. We know people who know people. We can find you a mentor. And on the other hand, is there something that you've been doing that you really wish other people knew how to do because you're tired of being the one who does it all the time, or you just want more people who can do it? Come talk to us. Let us put you on our big list of mentors. And then we can connect people more one-on-one with, hey, if you want to be an autocrat, here are 3 people and their contact information. We can set you up. Or even for big things like autocrating, let's get you a buddy system and find people who are willing to do it with somebody, as far as being a spotter, basically, like you would have for weightlifting. It's how I got to do my first day board. Is I had somebody who was experienced as day board as my backup and cheering me on, but not getting it in my way, and able to say, oh, have you thought about this? Do you know how you're going to plan your budget? The things that I want to know to do, but not, here's your menu, go buy the ingredients. So I think connecting people into that kind of relationship, 1, is good for the Barony and for our community, but 2, would make it a lot easier for people to volunteer. And once you've been mentored, it's much easier to say, oh no, I know how to do that, I want to pass it on. And I think that's true for most people, that they want to pass on their knowledge. You just have to give them a chance.
Thank you. Fiore and Friedrich.
We've heard, I think, 2 points there that are worth reiterating. 1, that people need to know the opportunities exist. 2, people need to be trained to do those things. They need to be mentored. I think the third thing for me is, why do people volunteer things? Why will people volunteer if they know it's there and they know they can get assistance? And that comes back to building the sense of Carolingia, of a greater Carolingia, and a community beyond just my narrow activity or segment. I think if people say, I fence and that's what I do, that's great. So they'll help fencing run, but they might not be as interested in helping Carolingia run. But if they develop those friendships across those activities, then they're helping their friends and Carolingia run things and move forward together. So it goes back to those, crossing those segments.
So my peer likes to talk a lot about the SCA being a game of in front of the curtain and behind the curtain. And in front of the curtain being people who come to the event and enjoy the event and maybe don't necessarily actively volunteer to help the thing go. And then the behind the curtain being the people who, you know, are volunteering for all of the roles and all of the things and sitting at gate to make sure that, you know, that things actually happen in some sort of semblance of the beautiful game that we see. I like to add that behind the curtain, there's not just one type of service. There's not just one type of volunteerism or one type of ask. When Rosie and Thomas stepped up, I got the idea that I wanted to ask them if we could build their clothing. And it wasn't something that was done here, but it wasn't something that I'm going to volunteer to build their clothing. Is that something I've done? Sure. But that wasn't what was fun for me. What was fun for me was to say, who are the people who are new here now too, and ask them, would you be interested in building a portion of the clothing for the elevation of our new Baron and Baroness? And that ask built a team of 7 people who built the garb for their elevation. But none of those people would have thought, I'm the person who wants to volunteer to do this thing. And that's mostly the place where I live with volunteerism, is who can you ask to do a portion, a small thing that makes them feel like $1 million because it is both attainable and makes them feel good about what their role is here. And how can you convene groups of those people to complete a task? And how do those groups then become other groups? Everybody who came in on that team has built other things, has embroidered other things for royalty, has been part of co-autocrating teams. They've spread out and done things in the barony. And it was just a little ask. Can you sew this one garment? Can you take on this project? I think we can do a lot more of that. Rather than saying, can you take on this big, scary role? Or even, can you take on this role that we're going to explain to you from soup to nuts? How about, can you do this one thing that is going to be super cool and have them enjoy that bliss of being part of a coalition that does a thing? I really believe that we depend on volunteers that can take on the big hauls, that can take on the big burdens, but we don't need to only depend on those types of volunteers. We can depend on volunteers who can do a thing. Can you please deliver this thing from X to Y?
Yeah.
Can you please carry the small burdens?
We don't need a few heroes. We need like a legion of doers.
Yeah.
Or contributors. Yeah.
Contributors. Yeah.
A legion of contributors.
I like that. Okay.
Thank you. It's a little after 9 o'clock. I know a bunch of questions have been submitted on the website, and I'm sure all of our candidates will get responses out to all of those. We probably have time for one more question if someone has one. Otherwise, I will assume people can just submit them in writing. I'm not seeing a lot of desperate waving. Okay, I think we're good. Well, I would just like to thank our candidates for taking part in this. I think you all did a great job.
Yeah, Cassandra, I'd like to say, I'm really happy to see how many people have signed in today to attend this meeting. I'm really happy to see the participation from the Baron in this process.
All right. We also have a tentative date on the calendar for a second one. So if there is interest in that, we're happy to go forward with it. We'll probably talk amongst ourselves with the candidates and our dear web minister about that. And I will announce that within the next week. And I think that's it for the evening. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, Cassandra, for facilitating, and Simon for doing the tech for this.
Yes, thank you, Simon.
Yes, thank you both.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.